to begin.
Hey, what is up, guys, and welcome back to another episode of the podcast. Today, my guest is Alfonso Gomez-Rejon. He is the director of The Current War, The Director's Cut, Me and Earl and the Dying Girl, and The Town That Dreaded Sundown. On top of that, he's had the opportunity to work on shows like Glee, American Horror Story, and most recently, Hunters on Amazon Prime. Now, it was awesome having Alfonso on the podcast. Definitely something that I was looking forward to for a couple of weeks as we got closer to the date. Only because I had the chance to see some of the movies beforehand, before knowing that he was behind it. And then once, I had the opportunity to get in contact with him, I thought it was great, having the opportunity to kind of sit down with the person who was directing those films. So I hope you guys enjoyed the conversation. I don't want to give too much away. And if you guys have the time, which being that it is still quarantine time and we still got to be inside and whatnot, you have time to watch the movies. So you got plenty of time. I'm pretty sure by this time, everything on Netflix, on Hulu, on most of these streaming services, I'm pretty sure you're either watching the same thing over and over, which, talking about The Office, I know you're out there, people. And hey, I do it too, so can't blame you. But ultimately, it's up to you. Life is made of choices, and you make the choice that you prefer. But you should make the right choice, and the right choice is to check them out. Nonetheless, today's music is brought to you by Onda with their song Precious. You can find them on YouTube and Spotify, and obviously Instagram. So go check them out, follow their music, give them a like, add them to your playlist, do whatever you gotta do, but support these guys and let the good times roll. We'll see you next time. Hey, what is up, guys, and welcome back to another episode of the Social Climate Podcast. Today, my guest is the great Alfonso Gomez-Rejon. He is the director of a couple of films, such as The Town That Dreaded Sundown, Me and Earl and the Dying Girl, The Current War, The Director's Cut. And from my understanding, you've also had the opportunity to direct some episodes with Glee and American Horror Story. And most recently, you've done Hunters on Amazon Prime. Thank you for taking the time and coming out here.
Thanks for having me.
For those people who haven't heard of your work, tell us a little bit about that. Like, how did you get into all of this?
I don't know how interesting it is, but I was, raised on the Texas-Mexican border, which is a much different border than what it is now. It was much smaller. It was basically one city divided by a river, but it was really just one city, the Mexican side and the American side, and you just it was so fluid, and it didn't really start separating and becoming two countries really until like you really started to feel it post NAFTA, post 9/11, post cartel wars. But it was a really beautiful way of life that I think only with time did I realize how special it was. Yeah,
so you were born and raised there pretty much
on the Mexican side, but raised Mexican. I mean, sorry, on the American side, but raised Mexican. As in we weren't allowed to speak English at home. We spent, half of our time was, half your friends are from one side and all my family was on the Mexican side. My grandparents were on the Mexican side, and they were very strict. My parents, my dad was from, the Yucatan, and my mom's from Mexico City. And then little by little, they made their way to the border for different reasons. And then right before my older brother was born, they moved to the American side of the border. But it was literally like crossing the street. There was there was no real difference from one side to another. Everyone's Mexican.
Yeah.
And it just depends on when you're on the American side. I think my parents were very protective of our language, our culture, but really language, because as with every generation, things start to get lost
Yeah, of course.
And then there were, when you're on the border, there's all these other cultures there too. So it was a very kind of unique way, I guess, a beautiful way of growing up. I was most lucky in that I had great parents who always pushed the arts or allowed us to explore the arts, and they had 3 kids that were all artists. So there were fears of a career in the arts, but my older brother was the first to kind of break down those barriers with a career in music, and my sister in fine arts, and then my brother now has a tequila line called Rejon.
Oh, nice.
My sister's now a chef and an art historian, has her own company here called Art Bites, and I became a filmmaker. But they're the ones that started to, I guess my parents started to get used to the idea of now their third and youngest having a career in the arts. But they just always supported us, even if they didn't fully understand it.
That's good. Yeah, that's actually one of the questions I kind of wanted to touch base on first, because I'm the oldest. I'm technically first generation. My parents are from Mexico, but and I do graphic design, and I know that wasn't their thing at first. They were like, "What are you gonna do that for? Like, where is your future in that?" And of course, there's different areas that you can jump into, but they were very against the idea of an artist, like an artist or creative in the family, because they didn't see it suitable to what they sacrificed themselves to come here for, So it was kind of this weird, it's still kind of weird now, but there's just more support now, but there's a whole different culture at that time, in the way that we're being approached.
Well, me wanting to make movies was like going to Mars. It didn't make any sense. Now there's like there's a great, a really good friend of mine from high school runs the film department at the university, but none of that existed. None of it existed. Yeah. So my access was through, it was the beginning of the VHS revolution. So that was my access to film history, because it was obviously pre-internet. And when you're in a small town, you have like a fourplex in the mall, and then the one downtown that gets all the old films from, they go there and die.
Yeah.
And it was through that, but it was hard to put into words why I needed to do it. But it just felt right for me for a number of reasons, and I became really kind of obsessed with. At that point, I got my hands on Scorsese. The Faber and Faber. Faber and Faber put out this. It was, it's a British kind of publishing house that puts out a series of film history books, and a lot of directors talking about themselves and their lives, and Scorsese's kind of became kind of my Bible. I try to watch every movie that he referenced, and ultimately, though, when I had to kind of create my own path, the only one I knew was New York University. That felt right to me because he went there. Do the Right Thing had come out recently, and that really changed me in a lot of ways. Oliver Stone had come from there, and Jim Jarmusch. It just felt like the place for me without really knowing why, and I applied, and I got in, and that just became the path that I was just kind of. And then it was like, will I survive?
Yeah, right.
And it was incredibly intimidating going to New York. Not so much of the city, which I always loved, and I felt right at home, but just surrounded by so many people. I remember everyone just was so kind of type A, and everyone was like on all the time, and I was so insecure and like timid, and but then you start doing the work, and the work speaks for itself, and you start getting a little more confidence because people start noticing you and talking to you, and then that was kind of it just kind of underscored how comfortable I was making films or on a set without having really a lot of experience before that.
Now, when you started, when the fascination with the whole idea of film, like when did that happen for you?
That's a good question. I started watching movies. It's only because I was it sounds silly, but I was afraid of the dark. I was afraid to sleep alone. I was afraid of so I was always staying up until I collapsed, and watching like HBO, whatever's on TV, Letterman, until eventually I just couldn't take it anymore. And it's just time to go to school again. Knock out. But TV really was created this like safe space for me. But I was always an artist. I was always drawing, sculpting. We were all artists all the time, so we were encouraged to paint and draw since as far as I can remember. So that was something that I always had. And then just discovering films and discovering different points of views. And I started to pick up on a Lynch movie or Scorsese movie, and I started to kind of study the craft, editing patterns and camera moves and staging. And then when I saw Mean Streets on VHS, that stirred something up in me that I hadn't felt before, when I felt like someone was talking directly to me. And that movie was so much about a lot of what I was feeling. That's 1970s Little Italy, and it was not that, but it tapped into something that I was going through at the time and transcended kind of words and cultures and everything. Yeah. And that made me feel what was possible. And then I started to see all his movies again through a new lens. And then all the films that started to really speak to me were films that ended up being incredibly personal to the people that made them. And around the same time, like, my house was mainly music. But a friend's brother lent me a VHS of Apocalypse Now. Oh, yes. And then when I discovered Blue Velvet, that was, I'd have screenings at my house for some of my friends because it was like another universe that I had been tapped into, and it just felt right. And then watching whatever I could about the making of, because this was like, they didn't have a lot of documentaries on the making of stuff.
Like behind the scenes.
Behind the scenes, there was like the making of Michael Jackson's Thriller, which was huge. Yeah. In the 80s, when there was nothing else out there, you could see how the cameras move and how the director would direct, and there was a little, occasionally there'd be something that you'd see on, there was a show called Lights, Camera, Action that Leonard Nimoy hosted, but there's very little. So it was just about studying that and studying MTV, 120 minutes, like all these, it was like art house cinema, and and then eventually you kind of go through everything. And then when I got to school, I really felt I knew nothing. And I just started watching at Bope's library at NYU, like a couple of films a day.
You're just kind of like analyzing them,
but just soaking everything in. I just felt I was so far behind everybody else. And then I realized even people that were from big cities hadn't really taken advantage of what was right there in front of them, you know? So I was surprised that my film history knowledge was pretty good, but it's never good enough, you know. So it became a passion to kind of learn as much as I could about the history of, the world that I had chosen to be in. And then, which is also incredibly humbling, because you realize how little you know.
Yeah, right.
Or it's all been told before. So it's like, how do you interpret the language that exists into your own,
Man, I'm going to get into that right now. A lot of us, we kind of try to forge our own paths based on what we have interest in. But it's easier for us to kind of like start having self-doubt when we're on our way to whatever we're working towards, right? Like for you, like at what point did you decide like this is what I want to do? And even with the lows and everything, you were like, I'm going to keep pushing through.
I'm all self-doubt. Yeah. I'm all self-doubt. I was more driven when I was 17. But there's nothing else, man. There's the highs are so high.
Yeah.
And when you tap into something, whether it's an entire experience that just kind of you're able to communicate what you were feeling, or sometimes it's in the act of doing it, when everything kind of works, when the camera move or not move, and the right expression with the right this, the right that, it's real magic. It's just, but what I learned is it's much more than that. If you're able to literally communicate what you're expressing, what you're feeling through, this, through camera and through performances and all that, that's just the way I express myself.
Yeah.
That's the best I can do. I'm not very good in the real world. I'm not very good with words, but in that moment, I feel very much whole.
Yeah, you're like in that zone. You get in that zone.
But the self-doubt is always there, and it's always the fear. I wake up and I'm not going to know where to put the camera. I'm not going to, it's like it's the constant fear and the butterflies and not sleeping, and then you get a rhythm, and then right when you start feeling confident, everything goes to shit. So,
that happens, right?
But it's always going to keeps you on your toes and it reminds you that you're nothing. But it's but you have something in your head.
Yeah.
that you want to say in your heart. And honestly, as cliche as it sounds, that's what keeps you up and keeps you going, because you need to say something, and maybe at the end of it, you'll be able to hang it on the wall.
Yeah.
And that's who I was, and this is a record of my best and what I was going through at the time, and as expressed in whatever genre, whatever it is, and to great success or not, and then you move on, hopefully.
Now, during that whole progress, I mean, from when you first started getting your hands on camera till now, have you at any point crossed your mind like, man, this is not going to work out? What will I do? Like, what was your alternative?
I had no alternative.
Oh, damn, okay.
No plan B. Yeah. I forgot to mention one thing of my mom early on, of how she would project Super 8 films for us as kids. Family films, sometimes short Walt Disney films, or I think they were Disney. And it was the whole ritual of clearing a dresser in my bedroom, lowering the lights, spooling the Super 8 film, and then total silence, projecting on a white wall. It was like a little movie theater. It's a very religious kind of experience, and I remember the silence, because all silent films in the room, and the mixed emotions of seeing your loved ones younger, your loved ones alive, whatever the case may be, your birth, whatever it is, and then of course the unspooling of the film and the burning of the film and her splicing it. It was all these rituals that I was just in awe of, and I think that the magic of that also seeped in way early, or way before I was able to express it. But as far as like a plan B, I didn't really have one. I have other interests like art history or like architecture, things like that, but even at my lowest, and there were some some times that are obviously dark, but there was just nothing else. There's nothing else. I can't think of anything else I would rather do, even when it hurts so bad.
No, it makes sense, because that, like, giving yourself that option, the opportunity to have a plan B, it gives you like this sense of security that if this fails, I'm just gonna give up on this and I'm just gonna move on to this next.
I think I have. My plan B was like unconditional love for my parents. It was just like kind of like, I lost my dad already, but there was like there's a safety or an illusion of like you're gonna be okay, which I'm very fortunate. But as far as career, I didn't really. Once I decided to do it, I was very determined, and part of it is ego. Like I'm gonna do it, and everybody knew I was gonna do it, and it was like I was again like this, this is a long time ago, and it didn't make any sense to anyone. But there was a fear of public failure after that. It's like, how am I gonna tell everyone I didn't make it? Not to say that I've made it, but it was something was driving me to just be the thing my dad would always say, just trying to strive for excellence, and I just wanted to be good, or the best I could be.
Do you think at this point you're still like pursuing that each and every time you do it?
Oh, of course, I know it's always on the edge of. I mean, the last film I did, Current War, was a very problematic post because of the Harvey Weinstein thing, and it's hard to disentangle my film from that scandal and the movement and everything. And that was a very, really hard time of people either not seeing the movie or judging it and always tying it into the other juicier story.
Exactly.
As opposed to seeing... So that gets complicated sometimes, but I'm proud of the movie, so I'm not... I'm really proud of that I was able to get it back and say what I wanted to say with it. But there are times when you just think you're never going to work again. But some of the greatest actors I've ever worked with always feel that they're doing is going to be the last thing ever.
Yeah.
It's just like this fear that I think it keeps you alive, and pushing yourself to for I don't know, greatness or good work or whatever it is.
You've worn a bunch of hats over the last few years until you started directing on your own. For you personally and maybe professionally, like, do you have any any lessons that you've learned from working with? Because I think you've worked with Martin Scorsese yourself, right? You were an assistant with him.
Yes.
Yeah, like, how was that? First of all, I mean, you were watching his videos. It was
a dream. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Because I was obsessed with him. Yeah. And I went to NYU and did a session with a what do you call it? A guidance counselor or some kind of counselor and they said, "What do you want to do?" And I said, "I want to work for Scorsese." And he says, "Look around. Every guy or every person here has the exact same dream."
Yeah.
That was like 2 weeks into New York, so it was crushing. But yeah, 3 years later, or 2.5 years later, I was working for him. And it was the fear of meeting your heroes, but I didn't have any. I wanted to meet him. I had no fear, and then it just became. He was even a greater kind of giant, and through him, I met Thelma Schoonmaker and Nicholas Pileggi and all these great people that have been, and through him, Nora Ephron, all these people that have really given me a seat at the table and recognized, maybe saw something in me that I didn't, but opened me up to just like a very high kind of bar that they would set over and over again. And you still, what was wonderful about that is that he's a genius, he's a master, but there's always a fear that's always there. Now when I saw it, I realized, some things don't go away, no matter what, how much he's succeeding. I think there's certainly confidence in the body of work and all that speaks for itself, but there's always a little of that fear, because it is ultimately, and for all artists, it's a bit of a mystery.
Yeah. No, that's why when I found out, you were working with these directors that have like weight on their, or experience under their belt with great films and everything. The idea that you were working so closely, or at least assisting these people, I would imagine it was just a way of solidifying your path into what you were gonna do, And now that you say that you'll go behind the scenes and see all these other videos and study them, being actually there on set, well, I'm sure that completely changed the perspective in what you wanted to do, right?
Everything. Yeah, but I did a lot of production work while I was all through school. I was storyboarding, I was PAing, I did everything. But once you sit you're literally crouching behind Scorsese's directing chair, watching him direct Pesci and De Niro in a massive movie. You're like, this is of course the way it always is, This is the kind of like, this is the dream. Like, if you're gonna visit a set, this is the one, to visit. Because as a kid, you always think every movie's gonna be Gone with the Wind. You'd imagine yourself directing these massive sequences and massive things, and you realize, whatever, you're leading your imagination. Kind of, it's all about what you're trying to say, which is something I eventually learned. But that was a dream, because this is exactly how I almost had envisioned this moment as a kid. Like, that's what I want. And then you're there, and then you have to really kind of stay there. Yeah, right. Keep it. And keep yourself composed too. Yeah, so I was very good at being invisible. So I was watch everything, never in the way, and then until he needed something, it just kind of materialized. But I would soak in everything. Even to this day, sometimes I'll get an idea or say something and realize it's something that I soaked up so many years ago, and how he solved the problem. But it still continues to be a dream. Just, he was able to get me my cutback of the current war so I could recut the film. I mean, I'm very lucky. Just the fact that his credit is on my film is, I'm very proud of that. It's crazy. Because his movies changed my life, and anyone that knows me knows that. And basically, anyone could call me at any night, at any time, just talk about Casino or Kundun. Like, literally, you can call me 3 a.m. and we'll talk about hours on it. I just enjoy his movies so much; they really speak to me. Now, I think at this point you're on your third directional film, right? Like, I'm about to direct my fourth. And then, but TV, I just did Hunters, which was on Amazon. Oh yeah, I've heard and a few other TV. I'm starting to kind of develop my own material, and so there's a few things happening with that too. Who knows when, But it's in the process. It's everything is kind of frozen, but you're developing and writing. Oh yeah, especially right now, right? Because of the COVID stuff, you have to like abide by whatever is going on. Yeah. So I don't know what I'm shooting next, but it looks like all signs point to one thing, so we'll see. Now, in terms of, like, I'm using air quotes here, your legacy as what you want to do as a filmmaker, right? Like, how do you see that ultimately ending up for you in the sense of what you want to leave behind? I don't know how to answer that. Yeah. I mean, Current War did deal with that, with legacy. I always think of people in Laredo and Nuevo Laredo, and if they see that I was capable of doing whatever it is that people consider success, in their eyes, that inspires them also. So that's the only thing I can hope for, as if I am an example to anyone, that it's just about courage to explore and express yourself, and then be true to yourself. And if it is a field that you feel comfortable in and can excel at, or if you realize that the journey made you aware that you were better off being an architect or a different kind of storyteller or whatever it is, that's all fine. But having just the opportunity to, because I see a lot of people in my hometown and a lot of students that I've talked to, because I'm involved. There's a scholarship there in my dad's name that gives to young artists and things like that. So I'm exposed to a lot of people emailing or calling, and it's almost like they're afraid of that first step, because if they fail, but it's okay to fail. What would be horrible is never taken that step and not know what you had in you. There's no way of answering that question without sounding like an asshole, because I can't talk about my legacy. You know, it's like I'm just doing what I think is best and fighting to get the stories that mean a lot to me, and maybe at the end it adds up to something. I hope it does. Yeah, you know.
It comes to the next question. The reason I brought that up as an example was because I posted it on the Social Primate page, like, hey, look, I'm gonna have Alfonso Gomez, and there was a lot of people who actually responded, and they were like, what, how did you manage to get him on, blah blah blah. So I have one question from them here. This is from they have a podcast as well. It's called the Us Podcast.
Oh, they're great.
Oh,
I'm just joking. No.
Oh, they're great. I was like,
they're good. Yeah, I like them. No. I like yours.
The question goes, this one gets a little, I don't know how you feel about this one, but it goes, are you conscious of your place in Latino Hollywood, air quotes, and does your identity influence the stories you want to tell?
That's a good question. No, until I'm reminded.
Yeah.
In which case I deny, no, because things come up and they ask you, and there was, a piece recently about the Latinx in the film and TV industry. So I get it, but it's not something I think about, because of the way I grew up. I remember reading a quote, I believe it was a Spike Lee thing. I'm not a black filmmaker, I'm a filmmaker. Same with Scorsese and all those movies, and I think there's something, a part of me that was driving me early on is to succeed in a certain kind of system and structure that I connected with or associated with establishment or acceptance. And I think it's because when you're from the border, you have your foot in both countries, but never quite. Yeah, it's like, that's what you are. And that's okay. It took me a while to understand, well, that's who you are. That's okay. The identity crisis is your identity, and that's what it's like when you're from the border. And that's it's not a negative. It's what makes you so rich, culturally.
I like that. Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Just accept that that's who I am, and it would be easier if I was born on one side, and you could just say you're Mexican, or because I didn't. My sister and I were talking about this not too long ago. I didn't know I was Mexican American until I had to check a box in a PSAT form. Because I was just Mexican. Yeah. And then it was like, what is this? And it's like Mexican American or Chicano. That was the option. And I realized, I get it now. But the way I was raised was so specific and strict culturally that it was always Mexican. But because I was literally born in a hospital on this side. Yeah. Now I'm Mexican American, which is a very complicated with a lot of different varieties. There's Mexican American, there's Chicano, there's Texans, and there's first generation. There's generations that wanted their kids to only speak English, which was the opposite of my parents, and it's just different cultures, But that's what makes it so beautiful, the border. And it took me, the Mexican side is all Mexican, which would have been a lot easier, But it was this kind of and that's what made it so interesting. And then had I just owned that earlier, I would have probably been more confident as I was in my early years, because that's what made me interesting to other people, when I always thought it was my own personal problem less than. So I wanted kind of like to succeed on but with time you realize that maybe because I've kind of broken into a certain system now, that I have an opportunity to just say, put the people that I like that maybe look like me in front of the camera, and be more courageous with showing a part of myself and my culture on screen. So that's the kind of stuff I'm working on, both in TV and film. It's exploring those avenues. So I'm not aware of it until I'm reminded. Then I do my best and my part, and then I don't think about it.
Right.
Because I think, what if they're wrong? You know?
Yeah. No, I get you. I think it's one of those questions, at least to me, that you're being like direct about what it is that you're speaking about. You know.
I know I have. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh yeah. No.
I know I have a moment now.
Yeah.
And hopefully, that moment lasts forever. Where I can make a difference in what I'm doing. I'm doing at least 2, hopefully more television series that are mine from the beginning, and they very much have their Latin experience. Whether there's a Mexican storyline all in Spanish, or it's a Puerto Ricans in Sunset Park, or whatever the stories are on the border, or all these things that I'm developing that are an opportunity for, different filmmakers, you know, and actors behind the scenes, in front of the camera, that I can do my part, and also in the feature stuff, which tends to be way more personal for me. And I've kind of buried myself in my movies. And I've done only 3, but I buried myself in them, and then hopefully the next thing is this show is to not bury myself as much, and show people like me.
Yeah, well, going with that question real quick, I have another user question here. This guy, his name is Ramon.
I know Ramon. He's I don't know about
he knows Ramon.
Yeah.
The question is, it's a little paragraph. So it goes, dealing with death in film and art can help demystify the experience, brace or embrace the prospect of it, and help cherish the present that we share with those we care about. Why do you think that's important to convey?
What was the last important to convey? What?
Why do you think it's important to convey those messages in terms of, or I guess those emotions is what he's trying to say.
I think he's talking about me and Earl and the dying girl.
Yeah.
He must be.
Yeah, that's what I think he's referring to.
Although the end of Current War is basically the end of me and Earl, as someone reminded me recently. Because at the end of the film, Edison projects a memory with him and his wife, and there's a moment when he sees his wife in the kinetoscope, which is basically using filmmaking as consolation.
Yeah. Yeah, like at the end of Me and Earl.
Yeah. But it was kind of an accident, but subconsciously you probably don't even know until you see it and someone points it out and you realize, I guess I kind of made a very similar film, but which means I'm still dealing with stuff. But that movie was about processing grief of losing your father, and not really. When I lost him, I got kind of lost in work, and thanks to Ryan Murphy, who gave me a break directing in the first season of Glee. I did an episode, and I thought it was just like a one-off thing, but luckily I was able to escape in a bunch of American Horror Story and Glees, and it was like a great time creatively because I was experimenting, and I didn't care if I got fired. I was just doing what I wanted to do. I was kind of fearless and in that way, because I was denying everything else around me. So I was just kind of focused on this, and in hindsight, I think there's some good work there. But it was only in facing death head on, by making a movie the way the character in the film makes a movie for his friend Rachel, that I was able to grieve. And it's about, and that's what I was talking about earlier about personal filmmaking, that it was about expressing what I was feeling, and giving an abstract kind of feeling a shape, a structure, something that you could actually hold and see, which is a movie, and then put it, like I said earlier, like hang it up on your wall, whatever it is, and you move on. But at least it was able to feel again and give, and then almost it's an expression of love. Yeah. Using the tools that allow me to express myself best. But I know that maybe in communicating something that you're feeling through filmmaking, if it's genuine, I've learned that it's pretty tactile for an audience. And I think that you can really truly communicate and transcend without words, which is why that film had to be kind of an avant-garde experimental film, because at that point the character Greg was beyond words, it was beyond anything of what he was feeling. There was no there was you couldn't intellectualize it anymore. You just had to kind of feel, and so I was able to, I think, express whether the movie's good or not. I know that I think I expressed something purely, and people tend to think that it was communicated, what I was feeling, because that's why I think people connect with the film. So I don't know what Ramon.
Yeah, Ramon.
I don't know what he was saying exactly, but maybe he means, I don't know what it was about communicating. What was it?
Yeah, I guess it's more about because I guess one of the follow-ups will be like how does a director interpret those truths?
But did I answer his question? I feel terrible. Keep me up at night.
No, I think I think overall the essence of what he was saying was more like, me and Earl and the Dying Girl. For people who haven't seen it, it's a story about a person who, or Rachel, one of the characters who has leukemia. She has cancer. And, during the whole time, it's like she befriends, I don't want to spoil it for people, but she befriends, or not befriends, the guy Greg is kind of put in the position where he has to befriend her out of guilt, in a sense, And you see how their friendship kind of develops. And, at least from when I saw the film, I guess it's easy for people to be like, oh, this is going to be a romantic film because it's about a guy and a girl getting together. But then you realize that it's really about something more innocent. Like, it's pure about that friendship and just that connection with those people that you don't really see, or connect with all the time. And I think what I'm kind of understood what he was trying to say is that film can put those truths in front of us. Yeah. And we're just I'm just watching from the outside into this character's life. And I'm trying to really figure out, like, what is this character in? Like, what is really going on? And I guess it puts me in their shoes to try to connect.
Because you don't go... I see maybe some do, but I don't go into saying, I'm going to express, grief for the world to kind of... It's just personal. Yeah. Like, I'm doing this for really myself, It's like, this is how I see it. And then that's why I think... Again, subconsciously, I really needed to make the movie was because I think I had an idea that I could potentially let some of this go, let some of the feelings that I was internalizing and compartmentalizing and hiding and running from real life, and let it all out. And it was more after that, the idea that I learned that was in the script, Jesse Anderson's script, about just keeping the conversation going, and the more you talk about someone, the more they're still alive, they're still with you, and you keep learning about them long after they're dead. And that simple idea is enough for me to like hang what I was feeling on and see if I could express myself through this process, which is an arduous process of like technical, machines and cameras and, all this kind of thing. But at the end, and you hope it comes together with the help of Brian Eno, but it starts with you, I think. Yeah. And not coming into like, it's not for anybody else.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, again, the whole idea, because if I remember correctly, I think you, it was like a movie in a way, and an honor to your dad, you said, right? Yeah. Like you said, that there was this part in the movie or in the book, that you presented there that says like, you can continue seeing somebody's life can continue unfolding after their death. And, I heard that, and like, it's simple, but you're like, oh damn, that is true, like somebody's life, whether their physical, the matter that made them doesn't exist anymore, doesn't mean that you can't continue learning about what this person's life was, And
it forced me to start talking more about him. Yeah. Because I wasn't. And we were best friends. Yeah. But the loss was it was just overwhelming. Damn. That after this, people start asking you a question about your dad, and you talk a little more freely. You look at pictures a little longer, and then one conversation leads to another, and you learn something about him. And then now you just make it a point. That's why I don't mind talking about him, because it's nice. That's how you keep it out there, and then someone will look him up, or you hear of someone whose life he changed, and that's why I have this scholarship that in his name, so that. All I ask is the young artists who get the money for whatever, they remember who he was. Like the scholarship has a name, and you should know who he was, and so that's the most important part of it.
You being the person who's directing this, who basically has to create the visual that people are going to be seeing. I mean, the actors are acting it out, you know, but you know, like I'm assuming that whatever you're directing, you're trying to set up in a position where it conveys the message of that particular scene, right? Mm-hmm. How is it possible to put something together like that? I know it's the actor's
for that
range.
Sequence or just in general?
Just in general.
In general, I don't know. It's scene by scene. It's like, oh God, it's a whole process. It's getting on the same frequency with the actors. To me, I love actors, so they're an extension of, you know, my imagination and everything I can't do, and it's a mystery to me how they can do what they do, but it's fun to express myself and have them communicate it with a look. You know, it's like it's
right. That's
it's
the
like,
magic
what?
part.
No, and to be witness to it, you know, and to be close to them when they're doing it. It's just like the greatest feeling in the world. No, it's a frequency that you have to be clear why you're making the movie, why me. Why is it important to me? This is what I'm trying to say with it. I think it's really important to lead with that, so everyone gets it. You know, they're there to hopefully fulfill and aid in you communicating what it is that you see. But in talking to actors is finding you know, bringing a character to life. And that's the joy in what are they trying to work through? What am I trying to say with this character? What attracts me thematically to it? And then at some point you just let it flow. You don't really intellectualize it all the time. And I think all those conversations start really early. So by the time you get on set, you have an idea of where it's going and how it's all working together. But it's more like your body tells you everything. So you just have to kind of trust your gut and know that it feels true, and you're trying to get to the truth of a moment, of a scene. And that one, the hospital scene in Me and Earl was a combination of their performances was remainingly silent. And the power of this kind of experimental short film, and combined with Brian Eno and in context. Out of context, it's a very different thing. But if you build up to something in context, it is a transcendent. Not that it's a transcendent moment, because that sounds really pretentious. It's when she kind of crosses over into whatever you want to believe in. You know.
Yeah, it definitely was a very powerful ending, I would say. You know, visually, definitely. You know, everything that's happening. We're probably already spoiled it for the people here, but at the end, you know, she unfortunately does not make it, you know, but the way, at least again, because I had seen it before a long time ago, and I resaw it like last week or something to kind of get ready, kind of like dissecting the stuff, you know. It's
all come down to their beautiful close-ups, you know. It's like Olivia Cook and, you know, Thomas Mann and Molly Shannon's. It all kind of, that's the beauty of, that's why you keep doing it over and over and over again. You can get beat down by Harvey or whatever it was that's on this last movie, but if you didn't truly love why it was that you made this movie, certainly in the last one, during post on the last one, and the hell that was, I would have given up a long time. I've given up on that movie and just letting it go. And you can't, because you love it so much, and if it's so compromised that it's not you anymore, you have to keep fighting to the death. And then, you know, I think I won. I mean, I got it back, and the movie that's out there, I really love. But you do it because you love it. I don't know why I'm saying it. You do it because otherwise, that's what I was going back to. Is like that ends, that one, the hospital scene in Me and Earl. It's because that can also happen. You know? And that's worth a fight. And in the current war, beautiful things happened that had I given up because the beating was so intense. Like
creative differences type of thing?
Oh, God, yeah. But if the beating was so intense that it was so easy to just walk away, as many people that love me very much because they saw the toll it was taking on me suggested and recommended, just like, you know, move on, this happens, and you know, but I just couldn't, because there was more work to do, and then my voice was still in there.
Now, do you, like, are these, like, the projects that you approach, are they very, like, do you approach them because you feel like they're personal and intimate to you?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So it's not like, I'm just gonna, I mean,
hopefully not.
Yeah, hopefully not, right?
Hopefully, I mean, you never know, but hopefully not. Hopefully it's all, there's a reason behind everything. You know, whether it's a horror film or a sci-fi movie or whatever it is, I'd like to connect to someone or an idea, usually it's something that is something that I'm struggling with or have anxiety about or want to learn more about. But it usually starts with like the self, and then it could be as big as it has to be. It doesn't have to be tiny. It's just as long as I connect to it.
So now I have another user question here related to this. I think we kind of answered this already, but I didn't even type the name of who did ask this, but I remember. It says, do the themes touched on in that film, they're referring to me and Earl, as a director, give you the opportunity to connect with that real human aspect of yourself? Which I kind of feel like you...
Yeah. I mean, I got in touch with... I had the courage to go to grieve.
Yeah.
And understand what that really felt like. And got to the other side of it.
Yeah.
While I was stuck, hiding. So, yeah, I got in touch with something that was very raw.
Connecting to that question, in terms of the... the one I didn't get to see is a current war, but I know it was with Edison and I think Tesla, right?
In Westinghouse,
so they were like the old AC/DC current war. Is that something that when you approached, what was the interest behind it? Was it like the historical?
Not at all.
Oh, okay.
No, it had nothing to do with the AC/DC. I didn't know anything about about that at all.
Yeah.
There was some ideas that I was struggling with or thinking about for a bit before that. I had gotten out of a film. It was a big studio movie, which of course seems like the dream, but I felt it getting away from me, and I wasn't able to communicate what I really wanted to say with the film anymore. And then what do you do?
Yeah.
Do you keep going, or do you walk away? And I pulled out because I remember even in Iñárritu that we talked about earlier. He said, "Always listen to your body," and it's. And it was changing on me, and I realized that it wasn't me anymore, and I could still do it, but then it wouldn't really be me. But then I went into like kind of a dark period there, because I think it was my ego was getting the best of me. Like, what was I really after? The glory or the chance to be a part of a bigger system or a studio thing that I've always dreamed about. But if it was no longer you, then basically the ideas of how far will a man go to win, or how far will you go to be remembered, and then there were these ties between inventors and filmmakers about you want your work to last, and then the things about legacy, and I wanted to examine those sides of me, and in the script it was an opportunity to either be, the self-promoting kind of genius is Edison. Not that I'm that, but I'm just saying you're that person that unapologetically wants to put your name on everything and be remembered for your work, or the person that just wants to leave the world a better place, or Tesla, who at the time, will he die a dreamer, which is also a fear, right? That all of us as artists have, and then how do you make a movie about the past that's really about the future? So how do you make a movie that feels like it would have felt at the time, as opposed to a stodgy period piece? How do you make a movement that's more rock and roll, kind of musical in a way, and forward, kind of constant motion, and that is about the creation of the modern world? That's exciting too, a movie that can hopefully express what it might have felt like to be in that time, which was so many new ideas and inventions that were happening. Even the invention of motion pictures was happening concurrently with that. So this idea that I still think about the inverse kind of correlation between ambition and emotional availability, all that stuff was in this movie, and that's why. And then the AC/DC stuff. And then someone had to explain that to me. What's with the coil? What? Then I got a handle.
I'm going to have to watch that movie. But, I mean...
my mom thinks it's a masterpiece.
well, if I'm going to see it, I'll be like, yo, your mom's right. First and foremost, like, what drives your interest and your passions in the screenplay? Like, what is it that when they hand you, like, Alfonso, this is what we have for you? Well,
it doesn't work that way, but yeah. But sometimes, I try to kind of develop my own stuff, but yeah, you get submissions sometimes, and sometimes they're amazing. As were, the ones that we've been talking about. Just when you can hear the writer's voice, when it's like it's so specific to a certain voice, that's always fun. You're reading someone that has a unique voice. It isn't just writing things that could be interchangeable with any other writer. And again, if it taps into something that I'm interested in, that sometimes I don't even know that I am until I read it, and I was like, he was able to kind of say something that I start imagining it and I can't shake it. Then you try to reconcile it with like, okay, why and why now, but mainly why me? Like, great script, but why me? It could be anybody. But yeah, usually it's just like a gut instinct on something, and there's a very clear reason why.
Yeah. Now, do you approach so like say you're writing something or somebody gives you something to, kind of read on to see if it's something that matches with you? Like, do you go more for like the feel-good themes that like mainstream popcorn films are mostly about, or do you prefer like those nitty-gritty parts of the human psyche that explain a story?
No, I don't. I usually I know what I don't like, but I don't think of it that way.
Yeah.
It's just, it really comes from a personal place, and I've learned that. I mean, maybe when I was much younger, I would have made some mistakes and done stuff for the wrong reasons, but no, I don't think about that. You hope that, I don't think my tastes are so obscure that they're not going to translate, but I just hope I'm not trying to be someone I'm not,
Right. Damn. I mean, it must be hard, I would say, because, as a person, as an individual or human, like, we're constantly going through different states, right?
Yeah.
But, I don't know, I guess just the fact that you're able to visually, I don't know, how can I say, like, just visually put something together that can carry so much weight and emotion and story I've always found it fascinating. Like, I never got into film, but when I was young, like 8 years old, my dad had like this Hitachi big camera.
Yeah.
And we'll go outside and put some towel around our necks and record something.
Yeah.
And it was fun. It was just fun, like messing with it, But once you get older, and you start seeing the behind the scenes and how these movies happen, like the movie magic. It's fascinating, And I'm not even a film guy,
I could sit on a set forever. I mean, I still like when I'm walking around, I see a truck. I'm like, what are you guys filming? I'm just curious, I could sit. I mean, I got my first job just staring. Yeah. My first morning in New York, and I crossed the park to go have breakfast at this other residence hall because mine wasn't open yet, and they were shooting Sesame Street in the park, and I just stood there forever.
They had Big Bird and all that.
No, it was like a live action thing. I remember the director's name was this guy named Mustafa Khan. I never met him. I'd like to. And I just stood there forever because I'd never seen anything like that. And they one of the people that worked there she was a production coordinator or something, started putting me to work, and I got my job. Yeah, and I started using it, and I got another job next week. But I'm just fascinated by the craft. Yeah, and then like in TV early on, certainly with Glee and American Horror Story specifically, it was so much about I couldn't control those scripts, but it was so much about not settling into a certain rule book that I didn't set. So I wanted to, and Ryan always allowed me to do whatever I wanted with the style, to shake it up. And so I'd always experiment, and not feel that this was it for me. I wanted to keep learning. So certainly American Horror, because of the nature of those scripts and the tone of that show, that you can go all out and really experiment with lenses and colors, palettes, and because you had great writing and amazing actors who were game, but it was always about pushing and learning and failing, but never just like doing what was expected to get another one. I was fine if whatever I was doing was going to be the last. So I would always kind of like try stuff, and sometimes fail gloriously, but it was really fun. It was really fun. And Ryan was all for it all the time, just like creating and pushing the show stylistically. It was really fun.
I think it's interesting because like Glee it's more like a musical. It's more like bright colors, and American Horror Story is like the complete opposite.
Yeah, but you could always do stuff. I had one argument with the DP there on that once because I wanted to use a different lens. He said no. We only use these lenses. I said, no, I want to use this lens. He goes, no, because I'm going to have to relight, because if I go wider, you're going to see all the lights. I said, well, then you relight. You big fights, and then eventually it works, and then even him, then he starts going wider and wider, or it's like movement or editing patterns that you can design, and because I like musicals very much, you know, so it was always, there's a lazy way of shooting a musical sequence, and there was one that I learned from like Scorsese, with like of really designing it through to different phrases of music and what is the camera doing at that point, and it was really fun to kind of dissect a piece of music and then try to realize it. It was a great time. I guess I was avoiding all the personal stuff, but it was such a beautiful world to get lost in for a while.
Now, last question here before we wrap this up.
Is that Ramon again?
Huh?
Is that Ramon again?
No. Ramon's done. He's done for the night. But in terms of like the shots that you set up, is that something that you personally decide on, or is that something that's storyboard by somebody else?
No, God forbid. I mean, like it's the ego. It's just crashing in.
Yeah.
It's like the Edison. No. It's I love to draw. I love to visualize, and I love to sketch, and I used to storyboard for a while as professionally. Now I just doodle, but I do love expressing myself through images and drawings. That said, sometimes it's exactly that, but very often when you have a trusted partner in television, it was Michael Goy forever, Fred Elms, the great Fred Elms did Hunters recently, and Chung Un Chung has shot my last couple of films and a few other things, commercials and pilot things like that. But that it's you trust your collaborators so much, certainly your DP, and you just kind of express, this is how I see it, and then in the conversation, sometimes that's elevated by that triggers a new idea, and then that becomes the idea that you shoot. Sometimes you're out of ideas and you go there and it's terrifying, and you just you trust your actors, you trust everyone, and then it finds itself or you design something that is wrong because the set is different, or the actor or the idea of going to A to B doesn't make any sense, so you have to reinvent it, and that's also kind of nice the way it kind of comes together. But I do like the process of designing it, whether you adhere to it religiously, as I have sometimes, or sometimes we just kind of have to have it be the sketch of something. I do enjoy that process. Some filmmakers don't, but I do enjoy sketching it. It goes back to me as like a young kid drawing. I love that process of drawing something and then being able to realize it. But that changes all the time. Sometimes it's like, certainly in TV you get pages the night before, the day of, and there isn't much time, so you just kind of wing it. And then, but you could always figure it out in a basic way. Yeah. But that's not good enough. So what do we do here? That feels right tonally, but also doesn't just fall back into some kind of safety kind of film language just to get it done, because that's not the guy. I hope I'm not that person.
No, it's good. I mean, you continue to push yourself, right? That's the
and
important part.
Fail, but yes, occasionally a success. Yeah.
For those people who are wondering, like, man, I want to start, directing. I want to start filming. I want to get involved in this. Is there any advice that you have for people starting out? I just talked to someone the other day who said, again, from my hometown, I talked to so many people from Laredo, Laredo is like my thing. And he really wants to be a screenwriter. And I said, do you write? And he goes, no. So that, if you can write, you're a writer, you write. Yeah. If you're a filmmaker, and I had no excuse. I mean, I had an excuse early on because I needed access to equipment, because those video cameras were expensive. Yeah, of course. So you had to borrow your friends or this and that, and then eventually you had to go to film school because you had access to equipment, and in me also film history and a library, things like that. But now you have a phone. There's who has a great lens that you can do, and then you have Powell and Pressburger, or like you think of Tales of Hoffman or Red Shoes, or these movies where the camera was flying and it was the size of your office. It was like these, there was no excuse. Now you have your phone, you have computer, you have the Criterion channel. Yeah. You have internet. You can have access to every behind the scenes, every movie. To me, it's just about actually stop talking and do it. Then do you enjoy? Can you, if you want to write, did you find? You'll know. Your body tells you. Did you find that that it feels right? Yeah. If not, maybe you can partner with someone to tell a certain story. Do you know what you want to say? Like what kind of story? Why are you telling a story?
why, you know, just like if you can answer that simple question, like why me, like why do I want to say this? If it's in one word, it's about whatever, ambition or whatever it is, then you have a hook, right? But I think it's just about, if you're a writer, you write and you fail and you rewrite and you show it and you get criticized and you do it again. You make a film, the same thing. You start putting it together. It's the one thing is to talk about. One thing is actually bringing all the pieces together. Yeah, you have to bring all these people together to follow your lead, and then cut it together, and then show it, and then it might be a success or it might be a path to learn how to make the next one. Yeah. But it's that courage of picking yourself up and doing it again. And some, you know, will be Mozarts. Yeah, right. You know, and we don't like them. We want them to suffer like us. No. But there'll be some, you know, Mozart. Yeah. And then the other ones are going to be more like, you pick yourself and you learn. That's what, I remember one time on my very first one, Dreaded Sundown movie I love, and a process that was beautiful, and that I was having second thoughts, and I was struggling a bit. I remember Scorsese, we were on the phone for a while, and it was a lifeline call, you know? Oh, damn. And there were a lot of things that we talked about. Yeah. The one thing that I do feel comfortable sharing is, he says, if you can find enough, if you can still find yourself in what you're trying to say, and my answer was yes, I still can, then stick with it, because it'll teach you how to make the next one. And the next one was me and Earl, because you learn so much from not necessarily failure, because I don't think the film's a failure, but the obstacles that and the politics, and it could be brutal, you know? And the studio culture, and, you know, it was just brutal at times, you know? Yeah. But then you're just that much wiser in the next one. But it's the act of actually stop talking and actually make something, and then be true to yourself. Okay, this is not me, but this is me. Maybe I'm a costume designer, maybe I'm a art director, or whatever it is. You find the worst thing is to lie by yourself because you like the way it sounds that you're a director, you know, but you must be maybe a brilliant agent or whatever, you know. But I think it's just do it, be true to who you are. That's the only way you're gonna stand out. If you're trying to copy a trend, someone already did that and it'll do much better. But if you have something to say that's unique to you, that's how you know, people will hear your voice. Yeah.
Damn. Man, I know for sure people are they're gonna reach out to me and be like, "Yo, this is a good episode," because I feel like it was great, man. The hour flew by, you know.
Yeah, it was fun. Yeah.
But Alfonso, thank you so much again for taking the time. I mean, when was the last movie released? Like 2017 or something, right?
No, that's the current. No, that's the problem. Let's talk about this for a second. Because this is like the beatdown started. We had one screening. We got into TIFF in a rough cut. I was still battling it with Harvey. What screened at TIFF, which is supposedly a work in progress, was reviewed as a final film, and I knew we weren't done. We still had months to go, but that was the film that was reviewed, even though it wasn't released for 2 more years, in a very, very different cut. But there's a link when you go to Google. It links to a 2017 release that wasn't. It's the power of a screening and the power of not having, you know, whatever, 10, 20 great critics. Now there are hundreds of bloggers. Yeah. And they just destroyed me and the film. And it was the beginning of the end of the Harvey story, in his fall. And it was all cut. And some people even didn't want to re-review the final cut. So sometimes it's tied to the 2017 reviews and release. But it's called, the new title is actually The Current War, the Director's Cut. That's the full title, to separate it, differentiate it from the other one that just called Directors. Could be it's the power of the internet and social media that could, you know, that could really hurt you. And everyone that made the movie with you, you know. But so no, it came out last year.
Okay. Oh, all right.
Yeah, it came out in October. Yeah, 2019.
So I'll make sure to watch the director's
cut. Please. Yeah,
instead of the old one.
Yeah.
The one that should not be spoken of.
Yeah. I mean, it's all right. It was just a work in progress when I was still battling it out, and unfortunately, that's the one that was reviewed as the final piece, and it's. If it was 20 years ago, maybe we can stop it and everyone, you know, just wait until the next one. But, you know, it just got tied into, associated with a much more complex and story, you know. Yeah.
Well, I mean, hopefully, you know, I'm not sure how soon your next project is going to come out, but just know that there's people looking, waiting for it. So, you know, hopefully next time that it comes out and I see you again in the store, I'll be like...
Well, I'll be here. I'm here every day.
All right, man.
All right.
Well, again, thank you again for coming out.
You.
And then, you know, I hope everybody enjoys this conversation, man.
Yeah, hope so. Thanks. I really appreciate it.
See you next time.
You touch the